Okay, so I will call the regular council meeting to order and the adoption of the regular minutes of April, approval of the agenda. There's no additions or deletions to the agenda, correct? I don't have any.
I just asked that you guys approve the amended minutes I sent out with.
Correct. Yeah. So when we get to that, we'll, as amended, okay? So with that, then a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Runge so moves. Councillor Goulet second. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Then the adoption of the regular council meeting minutes, an amended version was provided to council, so that's the version that we'll be adopting. Can I have a motion to adopt? Councillor Elliott so moved. Councillor Rudenberg, there we go. Councillor Rudenberg second. Any questions or comments on the minutes? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. First item of business is just a quick update. Brief here doesn't mean that I have to be brief. It just means I'm briefing you back, just so we're clear on that, of our meeting with the Attorney General and Minister responsible for housing and Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General. I had committed to doing this at the last council meeting when we overviewed the items that we were going to discuss. So Councillor Rudenberg and Councillor Vic joined. We brought the whole Public Safety and Policing Committee into it, and Councillor Rudenberg was able to attend by Zoom. It was, I would say, a productive meeting. We had their deputy ministers on, as well as the two ministers. One of the things that Minister Eby, the Attorney General, pointed out is, of course, there's that nuance between federal prosecution under the criminal code and then any provincial prosecutions, and lots of people conflate those two. But in a discussion, I also reminded him that the most direct access to the federal government to get changes on the federal side is through him, not through us. We don't have a relationship with the federal government where we can use any kind of political leverage. He's hearing it from enough municipalities, enough mayors expressing concern that he needs to be raising it with his counterpart at the federal side. So while we understand the difference between the two, we still think that the responsibility to get changes in how prolific offenders are dealt with in the prosecution service is done best through his office and through the provincial government lobby effort. We did hear that by hopefully the end of this month, early June, the province will be issuing a kind of a strategic review process, the terms of reference for how prolific offenders are handled. So it's clear from that statement that they're hearing that this has become highly problematic. And of course, we were asking, what's the point of having a prolific offender designation if the prosecution service doesn't already have a flagged file that they then handle differently? There's no point in designating people prolific offenders if you're not going to handle them differently. So we'll look forward to that terms of reference, and we've been asked to provide comment once it is released. We did find out, interestingly, that as a municipality, as an entity, the council, can actually appeal individual decisions by either the prosecutor, not to prosecute, or by the judge in how they mete out their judgment. And we had a conversation afterwards because it reminded us that we can also make victim impact statements on behalf of the community when prosecutions are proceeding. So the city manager is going to be looking at that, and we'll bring it back to the Public Safety and Policing Committee about how we can advance on that. The the Attorney General wasn't sure if the same appeal process applied to federal prosecutions, so we're going to get that clarified. And we've been working with a law firm that works around the province on helping municipalities deal with the court system a little bit more in civil prosecution, so there's a place we can go to get some advice. But that idea of council being able to weigh in if there's a decision like one of the recent ones we had where an individual is released to a problematic area in our community, is apprehended again for the same kinds of activities that he was under house arrest for and released again, I think that that's the kind of decision that lends itself to a pretty strong appeal on our part. And then the other idea of when we do have a prolific offender who who's in a circumstance like that, do we get prepared a victim impact statement on behalf of the community and put that into the hopper on judgment? Between conviction and whatever the judgment is. So we'll look at those tools. The other tool we talked to them about is that idea of an integrated justice approach, where we would be able to take a lot of the tools we now have in play, our situation table, the mental health relationships that we have with the social services, with our First Nations partners, et cetera, and for ones that are not being, individuals not prosecuted through the criminal justice system or incarceration, where they want to do something different, this integrated justice approach actually compels all of the resources that could be brought to bear for this individual to be brought to the table prior to judgment. And we were told that there's just a checkbox for that, and that we need to go through the chief judge of the province to see if we can qualify to be part of that program. We talked about the restorative justice program, and again, we've been informed that there will be some more resources coming forward for that, and so we will be following up with the province on what those resources look like so we could start to do that, particularly for the Bill 75 catch and release of first-time offenders or individuals who have special circumstances. It would be great if we said, yes, you may not be going in through the criminal justice or incarceration route, but you are going to go into the restorative justice system, so that there's still consequences for those actions and remediation still is required. So that's my notes from the meeting. Councillor Rudenberg, Councillor Vic, if you've got anything to add, our city manager, please do. I'm getting nods of no. Okay, super. So that's the report. Any questions from council on that? So we'll take this next as an agenda item to our Public Safety Committee, where we've got a meeting coming up. We'll pursue it further and come up with some action items on this. Okay. Good. Okay, we can move on. That's information. Moving on to city staff reports then. Statement of financial information, Director Bolton.
Thank you. So the purpose of this report is to present the financial information required under Section 168 of the Community Charter and the additional schedules required as part of our Statement of Financial Information for 2021. So the Statement of Financial Information is required on a yearly basis as per the Financial Information Act. The Community Charter also requires a yearly report on council remuneration and benefits. The expense includes all expenses incurred, not just from training and travel accounts. So attached are the three schedules. Just to note, Schedule A is our financial statements, which Council saw last week. So the recommendation is that Council receive for informational purposes Schedules B, C, and D of the City's 2021 Statement of Financial Information, and that the Mayor be authorized to sign the 2021 Statement of Financial Information on behalf of Council.
Okay, so let's deal with the recommendation first, then I have a comment to provide to Council. Councillor Runge, so moved. Councillor Elliott, second. Any questions or comments on either the report or the statements? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Okay. So the comment I want to make, and we had this discussion with senior staff, this is set at anything above 75K. And when it was established, this transparency, which we're all for, when it was established, it was to reveal how much senior bureaucrats in the public service were being paid. But you'll see that it's not kept pace with inflation. So now we're reporting out on equipment operators, we're reporting out on mechanics and so on. So it's not really, that was never the intent that we're going that far down. And so I'm, wondering if council is willing to send a little, letter to the powers that be that they may want to actually catch up the bottom ceiling of this to inflation, so that it's not catching individuals it was never intended to capture in here. So set it at 100K or whatever the case may be, so that you don't have some of our regular line staff being reported out on this. So it's an intention issue that I think is misaligned because they haven't been actually adjusting upward what that bottom ceiling is. So thoughts on that, Councillor Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually support that idea, although I think it would make an excellent resolution to UBCM. And also, and I raised this at the last time that we went through this, and that is that I have a concern over privacy, that we are naming the individuals that are attached to the various titles, and that maybe we should be asking that through a resolution to the UBCM that we delete the names and just put in the titles, just out of the interests of privacy.
Yeah, and again, that's what the law requires us to do in the names. I think let's separate out the two issues. One on the ceiling, I think we can start by just saying to the provincial government, hey, would you consider this? Because I think once they actually think about it, then, they might just do it. On the privacy issue, you're welcome to bring a resolution forward on that. I don't know how long we've been reporting out, Sophie, but it's always been with the names, correct?
Yeah, and it's one of the exceptions in the FOIP Act. If you're a municipal person, your wage can be, it's accessible, yeah.
Yeah, even by an FOI if somebody wanted to find out, right? So the privacy isn't protected under the Act. Councillor Runge.
Yeah, I think you're right. We do have to come with the times. And then would that also mean that we adjust Schedule C, or would that be a separate resolution? I think we might be getting, with regards to services, also low.
Yeah, can you remind us what the ceiling is on the Schedule C?
25.
25? Yeah, sorry. And can you remember what the intent was on that? Just who we're doing business with?
That's just the intent to show who we're having contracts with and all that sort of stuff, right? So.
Okay, so if we just split it, saying, hey, you may want to look at both, but in particular, who's getting paid at maybe 100K or inflate it, okay? So with that, if I could just have a council resolution to that effect, then we'll get a letter off to the appropriate ministry and minister for that. Councillor Vic, Councillor Runge, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. And that would include both a statement on the Schedule B and then a consideration for the Schedule C as well. Okay? Great. Councillor Runge?
And just for clarification, of course, the council one would not change.
No, and I think the inherent transparency on elected officials, it doesn't matter what level, you're an elected official.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, then we can move on. Next report, the Fire Hall renovation project, City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of this report is actually twofold. First, it's to obtain council approval to award the construction contract for the Fire Hall renovation project to Quesnel Construction, and then to increase the project budget to $5 million. And that $5 million is split there between grant funding is roughly 2.5 and roughly 2.5 if council approves that from council reinvestment reserve. So approximately a 50-50 split. So just by way of summary, in 2021, the city did receive a grant from the COVID-19 Resilience Infrastructure Fund for $2.5 million. MQN architect was hired by the city, and if you recall, previous to that, MQN had actually done a study for the city looking at that fire hall specifically. It was actually a really great example of spending the money, doing the homework up front, and getting grant ready, and that's what council decided to do, and that strategy worked really well for this particular grant we received. I'm not going to go through all of Jeff's points here. Council passed a resolution approving a budget of $4.5 million for the total funding from the the total funding for that project. The request for proposal was issued and it just closed. So that's to hire the general contractor, and that's when we really get the market intelligence of what costing has done. And we had a lot of interest from contractors to start with, and we actually developed a preferred vendors list. But of all those contractors who were interested, they were all busy enough that only one submission was actually received. Everyone else dropped out. So I think it's very reflective of the busyness of the contractors. And the one that did put the bid in, Quesnel Construction, is a firm that we've worked with a lot in the last few years. They did the museum project, so they are an excellent local firm. And sorry, I did mention that they're a local firm, which is of benefit to the local economy as well. So the submission received from Fresno Construction was $4,190,000, and that is within the range that was anticipated in the quantity survey. The architect reviewed the proposal from Fresno, and in their opinion, the proposal is complete and the bid price is reasonable based on current market conditions. And the really interesting note, and council's going to hear a lot of this in the next little while, is that cost escalation has been very, very extreme. And in fact, suggesting right now that the inflation, construction inflation for major projects is 2% per month. So that's a crazy number when you think about that. It's a crazy number. And for this project, it actually reflects $80,000 a month. Now, where it's hard to separate is the amount of how much of that is true inflation versus how much of that is just because everyone is so busy that they tack a bigger price tag on just to in case they get that work, right? So, but still, it all reflects the same thing to the city. The cost increase has been going up by 2% per month. So to proceed with this project, additional funding is required. The project cost, based on the bid price included, but without any contingency factors included, is $4,634,000. The architect advises that renovation projects have the potential to experience unexpected costs. Anyone who's done any of their home renovations will know that things come up. And it's very difficult and challenging in this case because that fire hall building is actually built, my understanding is built as 3 separate projects. So the one building at the end where the offices are now, and then the two, the apparatus bays were 2 separate projects. So when you put all that kind of a project together, when you start uncovering things and looking at what needs to be replaced and changed, there's a lot of things can come up. So what we're suggesting is that council actually not just meet the bid price received of 4.6, but put a healthy enough contingency on there that hopefully we don't have to keep coming back to council. And I'm saying hopefully at this point because there's no promise, but the more we're getting into this, I think if we put this project up to $5 million, that will give us a contingency in total of 8.5%. And according to the architects and according to our own people, should be good unless something really ugly comes up that we don't know about at all right now. And the further we get into this project, the chance of that gets more and more remote. So the recommendation is that council approves awarding the renovation project to Fresno Construction for $4,190,823, and that council approves an allocation of an additional $500,000 from the Capital Reinvestment Reserve to complete the fire hall renovation for a total budget of up to $5 million, including grant funds. And it should be noted that there are sufficient funds in the Capital Reinvestment Reserve to fund this project without negatively impacting the 5-year capital plan, but take that with a grain of salt, because obviously every project we have in our 5-year capital plan is probably undervalued. So it's something we need to think about. That's our current reality. You know, it could change around based on time. We know it always does flip around at some point, but that's the current reality. Everything is probably undercosted at this point. So that's the recommendation to council. If council would like, I could do a little bit of a plug. Just to remind council and put it out there again, that if this was a greenfield project of this size, which we were initially anticipating, so if we could start a whole new fire hall at a different location, this would probably, in this day and age, just my guess, would probably be at least a $20 million project. So keep that in mind. We're into this for 2.5. The federal government's into this for 2.5. I think it still represents outstanding value to our taxpayers and really solves an issue that's been a long-standing issue in this community of what to do with that old fire hall. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott, you moving the recommendation? Yes. Okay, seconder for the recommendation, Councillor Vic. Questions or comments? Councillor Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A rhetorical question, and that is that the project is bonded.
City Manager.
That's a great question. I don't know, I can't specifically answer that, but I'm positive that, well, I'm almost positive that it is, but I didn't ask that specific question. So I'm happy to find that answer out and let council know what that answer is.
Please do. I think it's important.
Yeah, and just for edification, in case people are watching, the director that's responsible for these projects isn't here tonight. That's why the city manager isn't sure. My understanding and recollection of the conversations we've had that, yes, it's a bonded project. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? That passed unanimously. Okay, next, Manager Robinson on FireSmart.
Awesome, thank you. So this report is being submitted to Council as information for FireSmart Awareness Month, which is running for the month of May. Just as we have done for the past 2 years, during the month of May, the Forestry Initiatives Program is encouraging residents to clean up flammable debris from their properties. We are educating people on making the right landscape choices, and if doing renovations, ensuring building materials are fire smart. If folks want to learn more about FireSmart, we have information tables at City Hall, the Rec Center. We'll also be on hand at 2 farmers markets in the month of May and as well at the trade show. As part of FireSmart Awareness Month, we're also assisting the South Hills neighborhood to hopefully achieve FireSmart neighborhood recognition status, with other neighborhoods in Quesnel to follow. Increasing FireSmart efforts from focusing just on individual homes, as we've been doing for the last 3 years, to the neighborhood level will help scale up our wildfire mitigation to a more defendable size during wildfire events. FireSmart Awareness Month reminds us all to be proactive in reducing the risk of wildfire damage to our homes and neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Robinson. Questions or comments on this? This is an information item only for council and for the public. I know we had the FireSmart contractor at our home this weekend, and I did field some questions from some of our neighbors about it. The package looks good, and it's informative for folks. So, okay, great. Thank you. Next, no correspondence, no SIP. So with respect to Bylaw 1912, the third reading for the Doherty Drive, do you want to step out? Councillor Goulet's going to recuse himself. Okay. Any questions or comments on this based on the public hearing? Seeing none, then for third reading, Councillor Paul so moved, Councillor Elliott second. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. And then with respect to the zoning amendment bylaw for the same property, third reading, Councillor Vic so moved, seconder. I need a seconder. Councillor Elliott so moved, seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Okay. We'll just wait for Councillor Goulet to come back in. Great. Bylaw 1924, City of Quesnel 5-year financial plan, final adoption. Councillor Elliott so moved. Councillor Goulet second. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. And Bylaw 1925, the tax rate bylaw. Councillor Elliott moves. Seconded. Councillor Vic. Did I see that finger move there? All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Paul.
Reported, please.
Yep. No changes to upcoming meeting schedule, no changes to committee appointments, any announcements or future events. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to let everybody know that May is MS Awareness Month in Canada, and the Quesnel MS Walk is in their 10th year and will be taking place at Spirit Square on Saturday, June 4th from 11 till 2. And thank you to Audrey Craigmell for taking the lead in this role for many years.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Councillor Goulet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just this Thursday, May 5th, the National Indigenous and Red Dress Day, not celebration, but we'll be having an event at the Friendship Center from 12 till 4. It's open to everybody. There'll be a little bit of a ceremony. It's a reflection of the murdered and missing Indigenous women and plus who are there. So you're welcome to come, and it is open to the general public, and anybody can attend.
Great, thank you. Anything else? Seeing none, gallery questions? Seeing none, I would invite a motion to adjourn. Councillor Paul so moved, Councillor Runge second. Any questions or comments on adjournment? All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff.